Hey everybody, this is Kenny C from Triple Threat Wrestling Radio, bringing you an exclusive interview. My guest at this time is an Indy pro wrestler from Ohio. He's also part of the TNA Gut Check Bracket. I am joined with Benny Blades, and he is joining me right now. What's going on, Benny?
Not a whole lot, Kenny. I appreciate you having me be a part of your show.
Thank you for being on, and looking forward to this. So let's go ahead and get started, and we'll get into the gut check bracket in just a moment, in a few minutes or so. But let's talk about your wrestling career first, and how did your wrestling career get started?
Well, I got started. I'm a good old boy from Rapid City, South Dakota, and I got started when I had a nice little flyer put on my van at the local gym, and it basically asked if I wanted to be a pro wrestler. I was in my senior year in high school, and I decided, why not? I'm 18, why not give it a shot? So, and that was 13 years ago. I basically gave it a shot. I was one of 30 guys that had a tryout that day, and 13 years later, I'm the only one standing.
Do you remember the first wrestling match you ever had, and if so, who was your opponent and what company did you work for at the time?
I was wrestling for Intergalactic Wrestling. They were just a small fly-by-night company that came in from, I believe, Illinois. They had guys like Bobo Brazil Jr., the late Public Enemy, Rocco Rock, Johnny Grunge. I believe it was run by a guy named Baseman Ronnie Vegas. My first opponent ever was one of my trainers, Bruiser Bennett, and I unfortunately I got handed a loss that night, but it didn't really matter. It was my first time. I absolutely loved it. I got bit by the wrestling bug, and like I said, it's 13 years later. You see me now, and still going strong.
Going into that match, and after all the training you went through, all the listening from the trainers and such, prior to that match, did you get nervous? Were there any butterflies before you came out of that curtain and performed?
Oh, absolutely. And any wrestler that tells you to this day that they still don't get butterflies, no matter if they're 5th, 10th, 20th wrestling year, then they're a liar. But no, I was nervous like no other, and it actually it was Rocco Rock that kind of pulled me to the side and calmed me down, and I swear I was on the verge of vomiting. I was so nervous, but it just get to hear a guy like Rocco Rock, it was humbling, and he told me just go out there and do what I was taught to do, and that's what I did, and I couldn't. It was a guy that I looked up to, and I couldn't be happier with how things have turned out.
Now let's go ahead and talk about the TNA Gut Check Bracket situation. TNA Gut Check, for people that may or may not know, this has been going on way before it became a segment for Impact Wrestling. It's just kind of been behind the scenes type of thing. Now it's become a segment for the televised show now. What made you decide to get on board with this whole bracket thing, and what's your take on Gut Check being on television, and how the all process coming along and being looked at by the judges? What's your take on the whole Gut Check experience that you see on TV?
I think the Gut Check thing, I think it's a great thing for guys like myself, guys that have been around for a while. It's even a great thing for guys that have just started to get that look from, reputable people that are in the business, giving you a chance to be on TV. Even now we're featured on one of the websites, and it's great to give give us more of a national stage to get our name out there. The whole gut check thing, I have nothing but, respect for, and it's given me a chance to find out what I needed to do to make myself better. And that was what I needed, what I wanted. And I knew I needed to step up my game. I knew I needed some work. And anybody who says that they don't, like I said, they're liars. This is a game where we all learn. And the whole gut check thing, it's a stage to allow all of us to just step up our game that much better and make this wrestling industry that much better.
For people that wants to vote for you, why don't you go ahead and tell the people what bracket you are and the link and info how they can vote for you.
I am actually in bracket 16, and the name that I am under is Ben Neal. And you can actually click on that link. You can find that link on my Facebook, on facebook.com. I believe it's Benny Blades. Like I said, I'm on. It's either that, or you can go to the Gut Check website and look up bracket 16 and look up Ben Neal. I'm kind of trailing behind in the votes. I don't have the same poll a couple of guys do, but I need to make up some ground if I want to make it on TV. But you guys, you fans out there, you can do it for me. Be sure to go on there and vote for Ben Neal in bracket 16 on TNA Gut Check.
All right, so everybody that is listening, it's up to y'all to make this man dreams come true. Every wrestler that's been on the Indy circuit for as long as Benny has, it's all about taking that next step. And it's up to y'all. So go out there, go to the Gut Check website, better yet, go to Benny Blades on Facebook, and the link is posted on his page, and you can vote for this man. Make it happen and keep his dream alive. Only one person is going to win this. So go out there, vote, make it happen. Who do you consider as influences in your wrestling career?
Influenced my wrestling career, I am a huge Brian Pillman fan. Any interview I've ever watched of his, he was a great guy to study. Growing up, I was huge on Mick Foley, but his style of wrestling, your body doesn't last that long. So you got to stick with the guys, that are got the longevity. But for guys that have mentored me in the ring over the last 13 years, like I've already brought them up, like Public Enemy, Johnny Grunge, Rocco Rock, and just recently, over the last, I want to say, 7 or 8 years, Rock and Roll Buck Zumhoff has also been a mentor to me, and he's helped me step up more of my old school game and basically keeping the tradition of pro wrestling as pro wrestling, keeping it alive.
From a fan's standpoint, besides TNA, TNA, obviously they got the roster. They have a lot of veterans, and with this Gut Check, they hoping that they can start building new talent for the future. But overall, not just TNA, but WWE, the Ring of Honors, the ones that's on television. What's your take on pro wrestling these days, on how owners are handling talent, developing talent, and so forth? What's your take on pro wrestling these days?
Pro wrestling these days, I hate to even say this, but it's suffering a lull. Ever since the boom period in the late 90s going into the early 2000s, it's just been kind of a downhill thing. And it's been something that I feel as if the promoters have been trying to bring certain things back, and you see Vince always bringing back like the Attitude Era guys, and he's trying to find a way to revive this business, And right now, I'm not saying it's dead in the water. I'm not saying pro wrestling is dead, but the business is slow right now. And it's evident if you go to your local indie shows. These indie shows once thrived with 200 to 300 fans about 10 years ago, and now they're lucky to scrape together 100 fans and put them in a building.
I definitely will say this, and I think it needs to be said from a fan standpoint. Attitude Era is great. It can never be duplicated. And I guess the reason that the likes of Wax and Jericho's keep coming back is just pretty much a ratings boost. Nevertheless, the road to WrestleMania has already begun, so obviously you bring those guys back, and they showing they still can compete. But it's just one of those things that fans just gonna have to acknowledge that it can never be repeated. It's just that good of a roster. There's so many moments that it'll take hours to talk about your favorite attitude moments. It's just something that it can never be repeated again. People just. I will say this: there are some rising superstars, not just mostly from WWE, because let's face it, TNA, they really don't have a lot of young talent that that people think is going to be the next superstar, but WWE, they got some promising young talent. But bottom line is, they can never duplicate what the Attitude Era. That's just something that we'll never see again.
No, and the thing that they need to do is they need to create a new era. This PG era that they've been in for the last 5 years, it's not working. It completely alienated the Attitude Era fans. And yeah, it brings the kids in, it makes the kids want to watch wrestling, but those kids will grow up and they'll just realize that they're watching kindergarten wrestling. They're not watching, something that's going to be watchable when they reach their teens.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Wrestling, like a lot of things, there's gonna be some things that are not necessarily appropriate for them to see. I don't know why they did to drop the PG-13 to PG. It's just like any other form of entertainment. There's always going to be things that are not deemed appropriate, and pretty much it's up to the parents' judgment on whether they should go or not. And I guess I'll just leave it at that. Yeah, appropriate. I get it. If it was an ECW, no way should kids be anywhere near those shows. But I guess it's safe for WWE, I suppose. So, what do you consider as the highlight of your wrestling career? Something that stands out to you. It could be a rivalry you had, a storyline angle. It could be a championship you may have won. It could be a match that you felt that was 5-star worthy. What do you consider as the highlight of your career? It wasn't a 5-star match by any means. I was still rather green in the business, as most would say. But there was a guy that he was actually a good friend of mine all through high school, and he entered the wrestling business with me. We had both entered together, and we trained together, we did everything together, but in the end, it turned into a heated rivalry. And myself and this pro wrestler's name was Zane. We were kind of the hardcore guys of the wrestling company, because we thought at a younger age, because our bodies could handle it, we thought that that's what we needed to get over with the fans, was to be hardcore. And in one of our blow-off matches, I believe it was a barbed wire death match of sorts, and we went through just intense falls, bleeding all over the place, and you name it. But in the end, Zane, he had such a cult following of fans. He ended up going over on me that night, but it was just when the roof blew off that place, when he got the pin, just you knew at that moment that we had him.
and at a young age, realizing that we had them, it was great. And it's very, very rare, unfortunately, in this day and age when you feel like you can get that crowd reaction out of people. And it's been few and far between, and I've not felt that type of explosion in a long time. I mean, yeah, I've had little mini explosions here and there, but I've not felt that type of intensity come from fans in, I want to say, at least 8 years.
Have you ever watched your wrestling match either on replay or television or on the internet like YouTube, for example? And if so, do you critique yourself, like what you did right, and what are some things you would want to improve?
Absolutely. I think everybody should do this. I watch myself on YouTube. I film quite a few of my matches, and what I do is after I get done, I wait a couple days, and I'll sit at home and I'll watch them. And I'll watch them a couple times. I'll watch them I try and watch them from a fan's point of view, even though I was in the ring, so it's kind of hard to do that. But then I watch them again, and I start to pick things out that I didn't like. And then the third time I watch them, I take those things and I write them down on a piece of paper, and I try to improve on the things that I didn't like. I try to either get rid of them altogether, or I try to improve them and make them better. And honestly, I think everybody should be doing this. Because everyone makes mistakes. No one's perfect in this business. And if you can't look at yourself and critique yourself and you think that you're really, really good or really, really great or whatever, it's, I can tell you that there's going to be a billion people out there that think that you're not. And so the things that I like to look at, things I like to work on is being able to connect with the crowd. I try to give my opponents the best matches they can. I always try to one-up my last match. But the most that I try to do is I try to always connect with the crowd, and I always try to see what's going to work and what didn't work.
What do you like the most of being a professional wrestler on the indie scene? Is it the traveling? Is it the fan interaction, hanging out with your colleagues? What do you like the most being a professional wrestler?
Well, being a professional wrestler, I love the fans. That's the reason I do it anymore, is the fans. And knowing that night, there can be fans out there that had a bad week or their life sucks. It's just great knowing that you could be in that ring and you can give them such a performance that they can forget about everything that is bothering them at that moment and get drawn into that performance. That right there is the number one reason why I still do this. And the reason why I love the indies is because we have the freedom to pretty much do whatever we want. Within reason, obviously. But you got the freedom with your gimmick. You've got the freedom with, most companies, they'll pretty much let you do any move, as long as your opponent is safe.
What would your advice be to anyone out there that wants to pursue their career as a professional wrestler? What would your advice be?
My advice would be to go to school. And I'm not talking about wrestling school. I'm talking about finish high school, go to technical school, go to college, find a secondary, school of some sort to raise your education level. Because pro wrestling, there's very, very, very few people in this business that can actually truly make money off of it. And you need to have that secondary education to support yourself as you try to pursue your dream. And then anybody who actually does decide to pursue their dream of being a professional wrestler, the next step that they need to do is they need to find a reputable trainer. I believe I know guys that have been trained by the Ganyas, guys that have been trained by Sharky. Go out there and find a reputable trainer and put down the money for it. And be prepared to put down more money for real wrestling gear, boots, tights, I don't care what it is, but just make sure you got real wrestling gear and be prepared. Be prepared. That's all I can say. You can never be prepared in the pro wrestling business, but just do your best to be prepared.
Again, I'm joined with Benny Blaze, all the way from Ohio, right here on Triple Threat Wrestling Radio. You can vote for him on the TNA Gut Check Bracket. Before we end this interview, you already mentioned your Facebook page. Do you have any other, 2 more questions I should be asking you. Do you have any upcoming shows, events you would like to promote?
One of the major shows that we got coming up here is for Northern Outlaw Wrestling up in Minot, North Dakota. They've got a show, or actually a weekend, I should say, coming up March 8th and 9th. I'm not quite positive. I have not been told who my opponent is. The last time I was up there, I ended up mixing up with a fellow named Blake Broadway, who, to my, to his credit, he took me to the edge, and he's a very, very good wrestler. He's very green, learning a lot, but he's a very good wrestler. And after my match with him, I really hope that they put me and him together on that weekend. But you can actually check a lot of their stuff out at northernoutlaw.wrestling.com, or you can look them up too on Facebook.
You already pointed out you have a Facebook under the name Benny Blaze. Do you have Twitter or any other social network links you would like to promote?
Yep, you can find me on Twitter at Irish Shooter BB. You can also find me on just a regular webpage. I have my own webpage at www.thebennyblades.com.
Awesome, man, and thank you so much for joining me for this interview. Best of success goes out to you in your upcoming shows and the TNA Gut Check Bracket. Make sure you vote for him. Again, what bracket you on?
Bracket 16.
Bracket 16. Go and get your votes in, people. Thank you for your time, Benny, and best of success goes out to you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening. You can listen to Triple Threat Wrestling Radio live on Thursday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, right here on itmiradio.com. This will conclude the interview.